An intertidal zone is an interface between sea and land. It comprises a variety of different landscapes, from rocky beaches through to gentle sandflats and mudflats. Due to the tide advancing and receding twice a day, the environmental conditions of the landscape are constantly changing. As a result, the ecosystem of the intertidal zone is distinct, especially given that it was created to resist these changes. Yet, any alteration to the environment puts it in danger, and dangers from tourism, pollution, and coastal development are among those brought on by climate change. Barnacles, mussels, seaweed, and sandworms are just a few of the diverse animal and plant species that make up an intertidal zone ecosystem and thrive there. Fish, prawns, seals, and migrating birds are among the species that temporarily use the zone either for food or as a seasonal habitat. Due to the twice-daily tides in these ecosystems, the environment experiences quick changes in temperature, moisture content, and salinity. Strong winds and waves frequently hit it as well. As a result, organisms have changed over time to adapt to this hostile environment. For instance, to withstand the low tide, mussels and barnacles may fill their shells with seawater. Species of fish and prawns seek shelter in any rock pools or water pools produced on large areas of mud and sand during low tide. Depending on how much of the day a region is covered in seawater, the intertidal zone environment exhibits increased biodiversity in various parts of the zone. High tide, middle tide, and low tide are the three distinct phases. There are fewer plant and animal species in the high tide zone because it remains submerged for only a limited portion of the day, exposing it to warmer temperatures and drier conditions. But because low tide areas stay submerged for a large portion of the day, they are better suited for aquatic life and have far higher biodiversity than the rest of the zone. The intertidal zone ecosystem is a complex network of various animal and plant species that rely on one another for survival. Some species move up and down the zone in search of food or to avoid predators. As a result, none of the zones should be developed on or otherwise disturbed in order to preserve a healthy ecosystem. Ecosystems in the intertidal zone are becoming more and more vulnerable due to a number of causes. Stronger storms and sea level rise are only two examples of climate change-related consequences that have the potential to uproot animals from their natural habitats. For instance, intertidal zone ecosystems are finding it difficult to adapt to increases in storm frequency and intensity brought on by climate change. The environment has been disrupted over the past few decades as a result of increased pressure from tourism in coastal areas and the use of beaches for pleasure. By erecting structures on habitats and entire intertidal zones, the recent increase in coastal development directly damages ecosystems. Also, as the globe grows more industrialized, there are more chemical and oil spills, which adversely affect intertidal zone ecosystems and frequently result in the death of numerous creatures. Large bits of plastic, metal cans, and polystyrene that hurt animals are all examples of litter pollution, which is a major issue. High tide, medium tide, and low tide are additional divisions of the intertidal zone. The high tide zone is hotter and drier since it is only submerged during high tide. Equal amounts of time are spent exposed and submerged in the middle of the tide zone. Since it offers better circumstances for creatures that cannot endure prolonged air exposure, the low tide zone, which is only exposed during low tide, has the most biodiversity of the three zones. Even though the intertidal zone might have harsh conditions, it is a haven for many creatures and a crucial feeding ground for both local and migratory birds. Moreover, this ecosystem prevents structures along the sea from being damaged by storm waves and protects against erosion. The intertidal zone of the ocean is where tide pools, or small isolated pockets of water form. These pools, which can range in depth from a few inches to a few feet, form when the tide goes out and seawater becomes trapped in depressions along the shorelines of stony shores. These shallow basins also become a trap for a wide variety of marine flora and animals. Each tidal pool is a thriving ecosystem where marine life is vying for resources like food and space. These organisms must endure hours of intense sun exposure, low oxygen levels, elevated water temperatures, and sensitivity to predators in order to thrive. When the tide is high, fresh seawater provides relief but also sends in disruptive waves and gives predators like fish temporary access to tide pool habitats. Several marine species, such as sea slugs, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, hermit crabs, sea lettuce, and red algae, can be found in tide pools. In order to survive in the harsh environment of tide pools, residents have evolved unique and practical adaptations. The sticky, glue-like compounds that anemones, barnacles, limpets, and sea stars create keep them in place as the tides shift. Some creatures that live in tide pools accomplish this by tunneling under sand, pebbles, or seaweed. Creatures with robust shells, like mussels and snails, or rigid exoskeletons, like lobsters and prawns, are better equipped to protect themselves from predators and maintain body moisture during low tide. The greatest time to investigate tide pools is at low tide. Always keep in mind that these pools are situated on rocky coastlines, so wear sturdy footwear you don't mind getting wet in. To avoid slipping on seaweed and algae, take care to find footholds on exposed rocks. Feel free to pick up rocks and look underneath them in tide pools, as many species prefer to hide there. Just remember to return the rocks to their original location, as many animals and plants rely on them for protection. It's crucial to refrain from bringing any animals that live in tidal pools home with you. To conserve these animals and their ecosystems, it is prohibited in many places. Cleaning up beaches and intertidal areas is another benefit of tide pooling. While investigating tide pools, bring a bag with you to gather rubbish. You may have a beneficial impact on the well-being of our ocean, our coasts, and the network of national marine sanctuaries by leaving these regions cleaner than when you arrived.